All right. Welcome. This is the second episode of the Asking You Shall Receive podcast. We got a good one today. We got my guy Courtney Douglas in the town and in the house. So I want y'all to give him a warm welcome. Get your notepads ready because I know there's going to be lots of notes. There's going to be tons of value. So let's jump right in. Courtney, please introduce yourself, welcome yourself, and let everyone know where they can find you, please.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me, Michael. My name's Courtney Douglas, born and raised in South Florida. Do a wide range of things, primarily mortgages, a little bit of land wholesaling, a little bit of everything. I focus on mainly, helping people as far as their financial goals, as well as motivating. So look forward to this.
Definitely, man. And I honestly just want to dive right in. I kind of want to get to ask you about yourself because, you know, I really think your journey and kind of allowing people to hear where you're coming from will really allow us to correlate the things we start to hear later on in the episode. So, kind of give a breakdown of your journey and this whole thing of where you've came about, now assisting people and changing their lives, either getting a first home and in this great area of real estate.
Yeah. So, like I said, born and raised in South Florida. My parents are from Jamaica. Immigrants came here, worked their ass off, pretty much laid the foundation of the American dream to me. Grew up playing sports from soccer, basketball, football. It's where me and Michael met first. And then had my journey to, middle school, high school, where I played football, went on to play college football 4 years in West Virginia, came back and, fully just jumped into real estate. The reason why I got into real estate was my parents are investors. They own a couple property in South Florida. And, I always wanted to be in it, whether that be an agent, loan officer, whatever it may be, right? Started pretty much in property management for my, family's properties just by chance, right? Collecting rent, doing the dirty work. And then when I graduated college, the mortgage rates were absolutely low. So, I mean, I like to say a baby could sell someone a mortgage, right? Because we're talking about rates were in the twos, 1%, sometimes threes. We were refinancing people from the 6, 7%. So it's like it worked, the numbers worked for everyone, right? So it really wasn't hard. So gradually went into that, that sequence, got into, mortgages, started as assistant, kind of worked my way up and now I'm here now.
And amen to that. But you really brought up some quick points of, you kind of just threw yourself in the learning process. I know a lot of people on the outside looking in kind of see real estate as this like big monster kind
Yeah.
of thing where you need to know this, you need to know that. So I'm sure, kind of doing that dirty work, collecting the rent, the property management, and then of course getting an idea of the whole refinancing process and ways in which you can really use real estate as a, honestly, like in my opinion and I'm sure in yours, like an opportunity to almost change, your lineage, your own financial outcome,
Right.
and the financial outcome for those around you and what's to come. So kind of just touch on that. There's a lot of people looking from the outside in saying, if rates keep going up, I need to make my move now.
Yeah.
um and just kind of some tips for them just to dive in and not hold
Yeah.
back.
So, I mean, like you said, real estate's kind of a second language to most people, but it's simple, stupid, right? And it's important to have people around you that can kind of navigate you through any which way in real estate because there's so many avenues. I mean, you can buy property, you can buy and hold it. I mean, you can, the new, thing called wholesaling, you can manage property. I mean, there's so many different avenues. And there's so many different avenues to not only make money, but off, just on if you're working like a, loan officer, real estate agent, a title rep, property management, and also on the, the outside as an investor or wholesaler, things like that. Now, as far as, real estate, like I was saying, it is simple, stupid. I mean, yeah, rates are going up, right? But there's always opportunity, right? Especially in South Florida too. I mean, as far as you, if you follow me, I made a video last week on, rates started to go down just a little bit. I mean, a quarter percent, and we saw applications, go up nationwide 28%, right? So, the market is kind of like every other market, right? People try to catch it at the bottom, and honestly, there is no bottom. No one can time the bottom. Everyone should be buying stocks right now while they're low, but no one's not, right? Because it's fear. People act of emotion instead of just going off of numbers and if they make sense or not, right? So, just in my sequence, I see a lot of people renting, right? Although, in some situations, renting might be the better option for you. I'm not the person to say, oh, splash rent, whatever, because, in your certain situation, rent might be the best option for you, right? But, if you're in a situation where you're going to be based out of somewhere and you can own a home and, have that home generate you income or, build equity off of, it's the right choice, right? And it's really, what scares people is misinformation. A lot of people, I mean, I
Mm,
hear it every day. People think they need 20% down to buy a home. You can buy
mm,
a home right now with 0% down, 3%, 3.5% down. People think, you have to have 2-year work history. You can graduate college, get a job offer letter. You don't even have to work yet, and we can get you approved. So there's many different avenues. There's a lot of misinformation, and it's important to have people around you that can help navigate you or just dive in and learn yourself. I mean, I'm big on YouTube University. I've learned a lot of things on YouTube before I even got in the mortgage industry as an assistant. That's kind of what gravitated me to the industry. So
mm.
just dive in. It's really not this big scary thing as people make it. Simple, stupid.
I really appreciate that, and giving that understanding, because so many people look at it from that big thing, but when you really just break it down and you really rattled off a few points there of, actually beginning that point of having equity in the home. It's great to rent. It's always helpful. It's always a blessing to have a roof over your head, but it hits a little bit different when you got that equity in the
Yep.
home. And also building that equity can lead to those upper other opportunities, like you said, where you could possibly refinance and end up building or getting an additional home or an
Right.
additional property. And in the same way, you can almost help others by providing housing for them, whether it be you're a property manager. You can
Yep.
almost do the whole Airbnb route. There's so many routes to go.
Right.
But it's a really great point, because there's tons of value everywhere, regardless if it's reaching out to someone like yourself or just that simple start of on YouTube. Look,
Yeah.
how do I get into real estate? You type and you just go right ahead. But
Right. Right.
I really want to touch on that, is being able to find people like yourself, because so many, especially our age, fresh out of college, in their 20s, most of us think, oh, it's going to take me years to save to have enough money for down payment. And it kind of leads us to our first question. A listener really wanted to get an understanding of, they're 6 months out of college and they just kind of did some research like they did, and they're aware of the FHA loan process. They're aware of that process and the fact that it doesn't require that 20% down. It requires a much lower percentage. So just, I'll let you dive in and speak on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So FHA loans are very geared towards first time buyers. And the
Hmm.
reason being you can get into a home with very, not great credit scores. I mean, you can go as low as 500 with 10% down, but the minimum is 580. Like you just rattled off, 3.5% down. And this doesn't only work for family residents. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4 units, which is great. And also, with that, as far as qualifying, they have a much higher debt to income ratio limit than your conventional loan, right?
Mm,
So when we talk about a college student, fresh out of college, I mean, they might not be making in their field, what they should be making, right? Whether they start as an intern, assistant, whatever it may be, they haven't reached to that income goal yet. So they can go ahead, get into a FHA loan, put 3.5% down. For example, like I said earlier, you can use an offer letter. You don't even have to get your first paycheck. You can use an offer letter to qualify you, right?
mm,
And then in the market that we're in right now, to where we kind of slow down as far as selling property. So there's not the crazy, you go out and we're offering 20,000 over appraisal, we're offering over list price. So now a seller can actually pay for all your closing costs. So
mm,
as far as getting into a property, right now is actually fairly easy. Recently, I had someone that was a veteran that purchased a home and they got paid $2,000 to buy a home. It's because they put
oh,
0% down and they got all their closing costs paid by the seller. So like I said, work with someone that's going to help navigate you, but also do your due diligence. I mean, it's not a big, scary process like you were saying. It's simple and it's stupid, right? But you have to have all your ducks aligned. If someone comes to me and, they got a lot going on in their credit, not saying they're not going to get approved, but it's much easier when you're already doing your homework on saving money, saving XYZ. You're building your credit, which I suggest you should building that since you were, 18, 16.
Mm,
And as well as have your ducks aligned when you graduate. Me personally, I still have friends that I graduated college. They don't really have a career going on or really doing anything, right? So, when I was in college, that kind of scared me. I was scared to, go to college and then come out and not really have anything to do. So I made sure I
mhm.
had an avenue. I got licensed as a loan officer when I was in college. Not a lot of people do that. A lot of people go in an industry and get licensed after. I was like, nope, I don't want anything to stop me from reaching to the goals I want.
Man, I really love that and personal quality you have there of just being determined,
You know,
because it's almost in anything in life, regardless of real estate. It can be career, it can be financial goals, it can be anything. You have to have that determination to see yourself, to do the work, and to end up getting to that end goal and that end
right?
destination. But really, to touch on what you said earlier, I really like how you used the fact of using this great opportunity of the FHA loan with the lower down payment rate and percentage to be able to get into things, not only like a single family home, but a multifamily home. And that's
Yep.
kind of something I've been looking at myself, is where the multifamily area, especially down here in South Florida, is almost like it's brimming.
Yeah.
You hear things, demand here, demand there, or people just waiting on the recession or home prices to crash. But honestly, at the end of the day, the time to really do anything and get anything done is when now.
Yeah.
There's really no time to be waiting. So I really like the fact that you brought in the multifamily homes, because from there you can almost be able to house other individuals, and they can help you almost not only cover that mortgage payment, but
Yeah.
almost get a surplus from that to almost either A, find your next property and do other things. And another point you made is credit. Credit, honestly, thankfully we live in a country where
Yeah.
it even is an opportunity. So I feel when we're placed in these countries and have these opportunities to even take advantage of things like credit, it's almost the answer of why not, but
Yeah.
because it's already there. So I really want you to kind of touch on, not only using credit in the real estate area, but how it can almost, just level up everything, whether it's financially in real estate, to honestly begin that real estate empire, whether it's having multiple properties and becoming a property manager, or Airbnbs, or just, your own set of properties if you want to live
Yeah.
here in one season or live somewhere else in another season.
Yeah. So a lot of people like to talk about, cash is king, right? Meaning you're very liquid on what you have. If you want to buy something, you want to pull the trigger, you can do it right away. But truthfully, what credit is, it's leverage, right? Meaning you can have a lender finance multiple properties and you not having to go out and buy those properties fully cash and be able to use leverage, meaning you can buy a, like you said, a multifamily property. Let's just say it's a triplex. Two of those, you live in one unit, two of those units are paying for your mortgage. And then maybe that be short term, right? You then go ahead and refinance, or you keep that loan, go get another loan, and basically use leverage again. You can, go into a conventional loan, right? Or even an FHA loan. You can refinance that one and put another low down payment. So now you say you put 3.5% down or 5% down a conventional loan, and then those actual, net income that you're getting from those three units in that triplex that you rented out is now paying for your mortgage in your dream house. And then you can just rinse and repeat, until, the process is over and you get tired of it, right? And that's truly real estate. It's leverage as far as not only using your credit, but using the leverage on the lender that's going to finance that loan for you, and basically using that to your advantage. A big popular thing in the last couple of years that's got really popular is financial freedom, right? Meaning you have income that's pretty much coming out of the blooms, where you're really not working for it and paying for your lifestyle. That's something that over this last year I've got taken really serious, right? How can I create avenues that are
Mm.
going to set me up? How can I work that much harder right now to have the capital to do things that are going to set my future up to where I don't have to be 50, 40 years old and working, right? Because honestly, yeah, working's cool and all, you make a shitload of money, but honestly, money in itself is a tool, right? You can make $1 million, but if you're working your ass off making that $1 million, is it truly $1 million, right? Because what are you sacrificing? You're sacrificing your time at that point. So,
Exactly.
that's kind of what I look at it like. But that's all credit is leverage. And that's all those loans are. They're leverage, not using your cash that's going to dig out of your savings, dig out of what you have, liquidity, and be able to use it and rinse and repeat type of thing.
You honestly hit that perfectly, and I'm going to tell my listeners to rewind that a little bit and please listen to that again, because if you really think about it, it's two perspectives, but the perspective you just brought up literally leads you to your goals and your dreams without the time horizon being almost twice as long.
Yeah,
You know, the biggest like blessing here is the fact that the barrier to entry is really so low.
yeah,
With that FHA loan and having such a small 3.5% down, that's all you need to enter the game.
yeah,
And once
yeah,
you're in, you reside in that multifamily home, you stay there for that year, you almost have your housing paid and covered for already,
yeah,
which is great, rather than having to sacrifice your own time, either going to work or clock in or clock out for someone else in order to pay for that living.
yeah,
After that first year, you can have someone move into that unit that you were staying in.
yeah,
Out of those 3 units, you can have that payment covered and almost half of your new property covered based on that third
yeah,
renter.
yep,
And it's really almost like a belief and a mindset shift, because we really weren't taught, of course, to think like this, and we really weren't brought up to think like this. But
yeah,
it's such a like mind-blowing thing, really, when you realize the barrier to entry is so low. It's not requiring 50,000 or these large sums of money, where in other avenues it is required to get in and
yeah.
play the game.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, you don't even have to take the FHA route. There's
Mm-hmm.
conventional loans where you can put little as 3% down. Maybe you want to go rent out a full single family home that has, let's say, 3, 4 bedrooms, and you rent it out to your friends. There's so many different avenues. And like people call it house hack, but it
Mm-hmm.
truly is a tool, right? Especially when we're younger, we don't have a family to house, and maybe they look down on us and being, in this cramped up, maybe the triplex is small, or the duplex, or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
or you're renting out rooms still like you're living in college, but it is very short term, right? And after that property, like I said, it's just used as leverage, right? You can then refinance that thing, rent it out more to pay for, rental somewhere, or, a new house. So I think starting your journey as far as real estate with some, it can be anything. Like I said, it doesn't even have to be a multifamily property. Just start with one property. Do not, when you have enough to get into the game, because you're building equity. You now have tax benefits, and then you have appreciation. And that's really real estate right there. Those three things. And then, if you move out that, you also have cash flow. There's no other investment that you can get those four things. And that's the power of it.
Certainly. And I really think it's the key differentiator, because rather than having to leverage yourself and your own time, because it takes a while, and it took a while for me to realize time is more important than money.
Yeah.
But when you really have that realization, you begin to realize, okay, I'd rather do things to leverage my time rather than myself. So whenever that comes up, I would rather have the properties being used as leverage rather than myself having to go to here or to there to provide whatever it is I'm trying to provide.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, it's outside of just multifamily. You can do a single family home, you can do apartments, you can do anything. And I really love how it's a very versatile market. I do have one question though, because there's always naysayers, and they say, I don't want to be that person where I get in and then all of a sudden the housing market crashes. It's very easy to have a negative outlook towards getting started. So what would you kind of tell people, when they have kind of that negative or
Yeah.
naysayers mindset? as
Oh,
they get started?
I love this question. Being in the mortgage industry, I hear this every single day. And it's honestly like it's like second nature to me now. So as far as this goes in many different avenues and it's geared towards the person, right? Now, me personally, and this is only speaking for my market in South Florida, the housing market will not crash, right? And the
Mm,
reason being, it is totally different than it was in 2008. Pre 2008, anyone can get a mortgage, right? And we're talking about financing and buying houses. Pretty much 80+% of people that are buying homes use a mortgage, right? So, in a sense, before 2008, you can get a mortgage flipping burgers at McDonald's and you can get approved and purchase a home, let's say 500,000, whatever it may be, right? We had things like stated income where they didn't even look at your income documentations, anything like that. They didn't pull your credit. It was kind of like applying for a credit card. You just put in your information and boom, you got the loan. That's why there's
mm,
so many investors right now that have a bunch of these properties. And it's because the approval process and actually the loan process is totally different. Now, if
mm,
you get a mortgage, it's kind of like pulling out teeth. It's not as easy. I mean, you got to go through a tedious underwriting process, even though we like to break that down as easy as possible, but it's not as easy, right? Another thing too, as far as migration in South Florida, who wants to live in South Florida? Everyone wants to live in Florida, period, right? So it's very hard for someone that, is from New York that, whether they live in the suburbs, whatever it may be, that the home prices over there are not what they are in South Florida, right? If
mm,
you go in New York and you want to buy a home in the city, you're looking at 800 plus, 900 plus on a teeny tiny, whether it be even apartment, right? So, and that's as well as California and some of those most populated markets, right? And then another thing of how I look at it is if you're a family and most people stay in their home pretty long, whether that's say 5 years or wherever it may be, right? If you're in a home and you're gonna live there for, let's just say this is your dream home, you're gonna live there forever. It doesn't matter if the market drops 50,000 or the market crashes, right? Because you have equity, right? You're living in the home and your payments are still the same. And number two, if you refinance, you still can refinance, right? If you sell, you still can sell. Now, not saying the market's going to crash, but that's a little bit of how you got to gear that situation, right? And you can certainly rent and you can certainly throw away that money, but I can tell you right now, and I'm seeing it already. Right now, people are starting the fear of loss concept, right?
mm,
They see right now that the market's turned and it's more geared towards buyers, right? If you bought a home in the last 2 years, it was nuts. I mean, you had to pay above appraisal. You go to open house, there's 40 people waiting at the door. I mean, it
mm,
was hard to buy a home. Right now, you can actually purchase a home and it's fairly easy. You have options. The seller's actually going to pay for your closing costs more than likely. If you have a bad inspection report, they're going to fix the things or give you credits to fix it. That was not happening these last 2 years. And it's because we had a huge, uptake in people wanting to buy homes because interest rates are super low and everyone can afford the home. And now affordability is not so easy, right? When interest rates double, and you see as far as your monthly payment may go up, let's say 400, $500. Not everyone can afford that crystal clear 300, 400, $500,000 house, right? So now people are like, man, I can't afford that, I can't buy a home. And that's why you see, if you go on Zillow, if anyone's in the market right now to buy a home, or just looking, you'll see minor price reductions. You'll see
mm,
$10,000, $20,000, and it's because there is affordability issue. Not everyone can afford these homes. So if a seller needs to get out their home, what are they going to do? They're going to drop their prices a little bit. It's not a market crash. A market crash would be, hey, a $400,000 home is now worth 200,000. That's not a
mm,
market crash. It's more of a correction.
mm. That's a really good point because, like, so many individuals have been sitting here. I've asked other people, when are you looking to buy? When are you looking to buy? And even I've said it myself a few times, oh, I'll wait
Yeah.
for the recession, I'll wait for the market to go down.
Yeah.
But it's really, rather than waiting, like you said, it's taking that initiative and taking that
Yeah.
action because I myself, I've been looking and you always see it where a year ago and through all the things that have gone on through the past 2 years, of course, the values of the home were going crazy. You had people offering well over ask. Now, those lines to the open houses are not
Yeah.
as long. Now, those lines to these brand new homes and new communities and things like that are not as long.
Yeah,
And it's really good and really nice to hear that, because a lot of people right now, they're still waiting.
yeah,
But as you go and you see these price reductions, it should almost be initiative to say the time is now, rather than just trying to be super picky and trying to find that
yeah.
lowest point. You know,
And I
people
and
are
I like
always
to
trying to time that bottom.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off. I like to
Go ahead.
put every economics, sector on the same round, right?
Mm,
And I know before I mentioned the stock market, right? When the stock market was doing this on every single stock, everyone was buying, right?
mhm,
And now as we have corrections, no one's really buying stocks right now, right? Because they're trying to catch a falling knife in which no one knows the downturn, right? And
exactly.
that's kind of like real estate. You're never going to catch the downturn, right? I know people in 2019 that wish they bought, right? They thought the market was going to in 2020. They thought the market was going to crash when COVID happened, right? No, prices kept going on. Prices are still going up, especially in South Florida. Like I meant, maybe not so in the Midwest and some markets. They're seeing a much higher price reductions, market correction. And some of that's for not even, individualized investors. That's hedge funds, right? These large
Mm,
hedge funds bought up multitudes of properties all over the US, in a turn trying to create the US in a rental economy, right? These hedge funds, if they can buy a property and then rent it out and make cash flow, and they're buying 1,000 at a time, that's just going to help on for them to leverage and do more things, right? And they're
mm,
still doing that to this day. There's a community in Port St. Lucie that a hedge fund just bought the whole entire new construction community, right? Because they know that they see opportunity. When people are fearful, they're going to go ahead and buy it, right? You think a hedge fund doesn't know that real estate's going to keep climbing in Florida?
exactly.
I mean, it's just simple things like that. Now, like I said, not everyone can afford a house, right?
Hmm.
Affordability is an issue right now. Not every property, if you're looking to make your first investment, makes sense, right? Right now, if you're looking at a triplex, quadplex, the numbers are a little bit harder with interest rates being up, right? But the good thing about owning real estate, as we talked about, you can always refinance, right? You can always structure your payments. You can always, get it to where you need it, type of thing. But if you're renting, you're kind of screwed. And over the past couple months, even years, we saw rental prices skyrocket to the point to where counties had to put a stop on how much they can raise the rent.
Hmm.
And, as landlords see it, they know rent's going to continue to rise, right? If their cost of living is going up, if you're a landlord and your cost of living is going up, meaning your taxes is going up, your insurance is going up, what happens? You're increasing the rent, right? Because when you own a rental property, it's not your primary residence. It is a business, right? And it should treat it
Hmm.
as a business. You're not going to go negative on a property that's not your primary residence. So, a lot of people like to call people slumlords and things like that, but it truly goes back to, look, if my cost of living goes up on a property that I own, and insurance is not great in Florida. Insurance sucks, on condos, on townhomes, on single family homes. There's probably a handful of carriers that now write in South Florida. Now, they're forced to raise rent, right? I know a person that called me about 2 weeks ago that lives in Brickell. Their rent got raised $1,100. And there was no excuse. And it's
Hmm.
just demand. People want to live there. So if you have someone that's moving from New York that maybe sold their property, or moving from where they're used to paying $3,000, and now they can pay 23 or 25, what's going to happen? I mean, if it's a business, of course you're going to go the route to where you can make more money. So that's a little bit about what's going on. And if you go on any media source, they like to push the real estate market right now as it's going down, 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 and it's going to crash, right? And now they're starting to pick it up a little tiny bit. You look on anywhere, you'll see, hey, mortgage applications are up, interest rates are down, they're at a 5-month low, and they're doing that to cause fear, right? It's all fear based. So, and
Mm,
the good thing about real estate and the bad thing about real estate, it kind of controls a big sector of the economy, right? Because when someone buys a house, not only are they buying that house, but they go to Home Depot, they go ahead and buy other appliances, they go get paint at Sherwin-Williams. So it does a big circle in the whole entire, economy. That's why when real estate was going crazy in these last 2 years, every other business was also doing good. So that's a little bit about, what the real estate market's doing right now.
I really appreciate those two perspectives because a lot of people don't realize it. The renters have that perspective of, oh, my rent. And especially through these past 2 years where all these things have been going on, a lot of people with that renter's mindset are like, oh, I don't know what this guy's problem is.
Yeah,
He's increasing my rent by $800 a month this year. Kind of realizing that if you decide to use that same money that you use for rent to get a mortgage on any kind of property, you're kind of giving yourself the power to have a say and to almost work with either your lender or the bank and say, hey, times are tough right now. I might need a little bit of help here on my
yeah,
monthly payment. Where from the renter's perspective, you're kind of just at the mercy of the landlord, the market conditions, and so many other things where you're almost by renting, you're almost just kind of putting yourself in a deficit by not having that equity and kind
yeah,
of giving yourself that personal say to where if your circumstances change, you can say, oh, I might need to do this. And the same if you're a property manager, depending on the kindness of your heart, of course, if maintenance costs and a lot of things like that begin to go up as, inflation and many other things have gone up, it's only necessary to do what needs to be done to
yeah,
keep, the house or the property in good shape. Many renters do not do renovations or things like
yeah,
that to their own properties where they're renting. Why? Because they're renting.
yeah,
Meanwhile, if they had that perspective of, I have equity in this place, it gives you that mindset of, I will take pride in making this place better or
right.
renovating it or keeping it to those certain standards. So I really kind of want to just get your experience and kind of some downfalls and some learning lessons that you've had in the past, either working with people on their first time purchases or some of your own as well.
Yeah. So buying your first home, it can be stressful, right? It like we talked about, it's second foreign knowledge, right? A lot of the terms, a lot of the things that go into play are it can be tedious, right? If you're not working with the right people. One situation's different. Not every, person that comes to me to buy a house is crystal clear. They're going to get approved right away. The underwriter is going to look at their file one time. So every situation is different, right? But it's so important to, do your homework, get with a lender earlier, get all your ducks aligned, because I see it every day. When people want to buy a house, they work backwards, right? They go on Zillow, they go look at every home. Maybe, they find a couple, and then they go to their realtor. And then after the realtor refers them to get pre-approved, they're like, oh, I'm getting scared, right? The mortgage process is honestly scary to a lot of people. I don't know
Hmm.
why, but when it goes to pulling credit, when it goes to submitting documents, everyone's like, oh, I don't want to buy a house anymore, right?
Hmm.
So, but in a sense, you are working backwards, right? Because if you're not actually looking at homes you're approved for, now you're going to get more. Now that the buying the home is actually going to be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. If you were looking at $500,000 homes and you're looking at and you're actually approved for 300,000, it's kind of going to ruin the process for you, right?
Mm.
It's important to get pre-approved early and often, even if it's 6 months out, because like I said, everyone's situation is different. I have self-employed borrowers that just started a business, whether it be a year or two ago, and their tax returns aren't showing too great. And we're still to this day working with their CPA to make sure when they file this year that their tax returns are going to show enough money so they can purchase the home, right?
Mm.
If they were to went ahead and go ahead and file their taxes and not talk to me before then, they have to wait a whole entire year, right? And little things like, purchasing a car or, co-signing for someone's student loan, all those things affect you in the mortgage process because it's
Mm.
affecting your debt to income ratio. And the debt to income ratio is the single-handedly most important thing for getting pre-approved for a mortgage, because that's going to dictate your purchase price. That's going to dictate how much you're qualified for. although, credit score, down payment, they play a factor, but if your debt to income ratio is too high, it's very unlikely to go back from that unless you get a new job, you get a co-signer and things like that. But debt to income ratio is the single-handedly most important thing.
I really like that because you kind of say, the fun part of home buying is what? Looking at the
Yeah.
homes, talking about it. Oh, look at this place. This looks so nice, this and
Yeah.
that. But you really need to first kind of lay the groundwork and the foundation that you were saying, It's a great point, and this is kind of why I emphasize for people to go to you because many don't know, oh, there's things I can do with my tax return this year that's coming up when
Yeah.
you file your taxes for 2022, if you're looking to buy a home either in the next 6 months or honestly in 2023, I would say reach out to someone like you because
Yeah.
they can do things now as they file their taxes for 2022 to make things as appealing as possible
Yeah.
to get that money and that amount that they're looking to get approved for whatever home it was they were looking for that they could have been staring at for the past
Yeah.
2, 3 months,
Yeah.
dreaming about
And
it,
then and then
thinking
in,
about
in
it.
in America, we have the benefit of writing off everything under the sun being self-employed, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, you're paying less taxes, but the mortgage process now, and this doesn't dictate what it was 2008 previous, right? Because it didn't matter what you had on your tax returns. A lot of times they didn't even look at them, right?
Mm.
But it also went off of your gross income and things like that. Now it's your net income. So what a lot of people think, yeah, I made, $500,000 this year, but if I showed 450,000 in expenses, now I'm only showing $50,000 on my mortgage application as income, right? Even though you probably made 500,000, you actually didn't have 450,000 expenses, but
Mhm.
on paper, that's what you're showing. So, when you buy a house, there's different options. You have a bank statement loan. We have a 1 year 1099, 1 year tax return. So maybe someone only has to show 1 year tax returns. But a lot of times people hinder themselves early and often as far as not showing enough income, and honestly you wouldn't know about that until you got in the process and actually looked over, had a loan officer look over your financials, had that loan officer go with the CPA to make sure everyone's on board with what needs to get done, so you don't have to go ahead and wait a year or two. And W2 employees is a little bit easier, right? Because a lot of them are salaried, they have a dictated income. It's not, not of things aren't changing. You don't have to look at profit and losses. A lot of, especially in South Florida, a lot of people have multiple businesses that you have to look over. But just the whole process that talked about before, it's second knowledge, it's foreign language. So it's important to get with the right people.
That is literally the importance of, meeting people and having these opportunities because a common person would just really try and achieve this on their own or by themselves and just look up online and say, "Oh, okay, I'm just going to apply." And they honestly, like you said, they can end up getting down with themselves and just
Yeah.
down and upset with the whole process. Meanwhile, there's literally people out there that are willing to help and put yourself in the position you're trying to be in with only just a few slight adjustments.
Yeah.
I also really have an important question. With all of the staying at home and work at home and things like that, I really think it's also a great initiative, especially if you have your own company, to begin to purchase these companies through things like your own LLC or like your own S corp, and the advantages of those tax write-offs that can go into, either renovating the home or making the home better or getting that refund on your home office and things like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the tax, and honestly, taxes and, structuring businesses and stuff like that, although I'm in mortgages, it's not my expertise, right? But there is many advantages to, number one, having a great CPA in your corner. And number one, if you're starting a business, if you're, just took over a business or you're starting a new venture, to make sure you're doing it right in a sense to tax form, right? Because starting a business, although it's cool and all, right? Yeah, you started a business, you may be making money, stuff like that. But Uncle Sam is going to knock on your door one day, right?
Mm.
And if you're not structuring how you're, getting your profits, following your expenses, how much you're making, whether that be in a business account or on paper with receipts, you're going to be in serious trouble, right? Not only whether that be legal or serious trouble on how much you're going to have to pay back to the IRS, right? And the IRS is not friends with anyone here, right? They want your money. So it's important to make sure you're structuring things right, no matter what it is, no matter how much you're making. I mean, I see it all the time. I even have people that are, contract based that are 1099 and don't know that they can, file their income in an LLC and pay less in taxes, or X Corp and pay
Mm,
less in taxes. So little things like that, a lot of people don't know. I can tell you, CPAs, I give kudos to them. Even in times like this, I couldn't imagine being an accountant right now, but it's important to having those right people, in your corner.
definitely, definitely. I really like the momentum of this conversation because we're really not telling people to make these drastic, big time changes. We're really saying do these simple things like build and work on good credit because it's provided here. It's an opportunity this country provides. So why not use the opportunity to build good credit and get strong credit?
Yeah.
And then, like you said, when people work backwards, they find the dream home. They got all the homes saved. They get the emails on the updates and everything about the home. But they need to do those things before that to get themselves in the best position possible
Yep.
to get the rate and the approval amount that they're looking for.
Right.
Do you have any other tips for just following and really simple adjustments that people can make to position themselves to really get this started?
Yeah. So not only like I talked about credit, start that early. Make sure your credit's in good stand because it is going to affect your interest rate. But number two, and something that I'm seeing more and more recent, and especially for W-2 employees, make sure you are being paid how much you're valued.
Mm,
I have people that, I look at W-2s, tax returns every day. So I see different titles. I see how much someone should be making or what someone else is making. Just
mm,
make sure you're being paid how much you're worth, right? I see a lot of people that, just because they've been on the industry less than 5 years, make sure you're always, shopping around your pay. It's crazy as it sounds, but that can help you out because now in this whole gearing towards recessionary market, companies are looking for talent, right? And they're willing to
mm,
pay you more. Although we're seeing cuts and things like that, well, those cuts are coming from people that's been, at that company for a very long time, making a huge salary that, that company can't afford them, right? So maybe, you started a company 4 years ago and your pay hasn't increased in 4 years. You can go to this, this company over here and make 20,000 more. And you didn't know
mm,
because you're so bounded by the boundaries of that company that you didn't even think about it, right?
mm.
And a lot of people knock college and things like that, but I know people that went to college for 4 years and making a great living, making a lot more than some of these people that, hey, you have to own your own business. So just make sure you're getting paid what you're worth because like we talked about in the early stages, time is valuable, right? So if you can increase your income by simple filling out a resume, I highly recommend it.
Mm. It's very interesting because like ourselves, we're both, fairly young. It's really understanding of just thinking outside the box rather than just the normal mindsets and thought processes that are kind of just given to you either through school or upbringing. So I do kind of want to ask you personally, all these things that have really are small changes but accumulate to a real big difference for yourself and to where you have gotten so far. What would you say are some key characteristics to follow
Yeah.
to really, set yourself above the norm and the average and to achieve those things that many others really aren't willing to do to achieve?
Yeah, so I think your goals have to be clearly outlined. You have to have it in front of you every day. You have to have daily activities. You have to have daily goals. I mean, I'm sitting right here and I have my agenda in front of me, right? You're
Mm,
you're stamped right here. I got a meeting with
yeah.
Michael Diaz. And
There we
those things
go.
are important. It's little adjustments like that.
Hmm.
And another thing too, you have to be working extremely, extremely, extremely hard, especially in these younger ages to where I don't have kids. Yeah, I have a
Mm,
girlfriend, but as we talked about time, when you start to accumulate things like a kid, you start to, accumulate, more family, you don't get that time back. So I'm so big on, I'm at an age right now to where, work is really important to me, right? If I want to, not work when I'm 40, 50, I have to put in, double of everyone, right? I like in the mortgage industry how it's kind of eat what you kill, right? You're pretty much, your own boss in a sense. You have to go out and get your own business. You have to make relationships. You have to do a great job so you get referrals. So as far as it takes a lot. My first 6 months, I can tell you, I really didn't make anything, right?
Ooh, there we go.
Okay, yeah. So my first 6 months in the mortgage industry, I really didn't make anything. I was working as an assistant. I realized very quickly that it's not what I wanted to do, even though I learned a lot. So I just jumped right in. I started meeting new people, even though I was doing as an assistant. And, month after month, my income started to grow. I started to close more loans. I started to help more people. And then I kind of built out structures, built out systems. And it's ever so changing, right? But, there's people that's been in the industry for 10 plus years that aren't doing what I'm doing. And it's because I work extremely hard. I'm very detailed, and certain things that I do, someone else is not going to do, right? If someone calls me at 9 p.m. that they just saw a home online, they want to run numbers, the next loan officer is going to wait till the next day, right? I'm going to pick up the phone, go on my computer, and go run numbers for someone, right? Even though I'm not getting paid, because in the mortgage industry, you're not getting paid until that loan closes, right? There's plenty of people I help, and I help for free, right? I'm getting out knowledge for free constantly, right? But you never know if that person can go ahead and refer you to someone else. Like I was saying, I think working hard, having your goals outlined, getting with the right people, I can tell you having good relationships can expedite your trajectory, right? Just being around the right people, being around people that motivate you, having those good conversations. Also, don't be afraid to pay to learn or suck to learn. When I mean suck to learn, work for free. Because, for example, I had this genius idea that I wanted to manage Airbnbs, right? So I went out, paid a mentor, and now that's paid off tenfold, right? I fully put my business in place, although it cost me capital up front. But now every month I get paid, and I don't actually own the home. I get paid for just having systems in place and managing the property, right? A couple months ago, I paid to, learn this whole land, flipping thing. Now it pays me off tenfold, right? So don't be afraid to learn, pay to learn things, get mentored, do the dirty work for people to learn things, because like I said, you can accumulate, income, you can work, you have the time. So take all of it in and expedite it and take it to your advantage. You're muted right now.
Man, I appreciate that so much because so many people they have goals, but they're really not willing to either A, like you said, invest in themselves, and especially with the technology world and just how everything's really, digitized and all mobile through the phone. It's really sad because the undervaluing that goes into having these interpersonal relationships is probably one of the most priceless things you can have.
Yeah.
Having these relationships and being able to learn and connect as such, it's really a great perspective because I've realized this myself. You can only go so far on your own, but when you surround yourself with those others that do have those similar goals and they might be doing things that you're not, and you're saying, oh, snap, they have the same goals I have,
Yep.
but I'm actually not willing to do those things. It is kind of a wake up call, but it also increases your standards as well.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you giving those values, man. Two other questions I do
Yeah.
have. People are always thinking about the future. So do you see any kind of like big changes in either like legislation or the real estate market itself that might be some areas where it might make it better for the home buyer or worse?
Yeah. I think there's always need for change, right? Something recently that I've got more vocal, kind of on the outside. No, I would say inside is here in South Florida, we have a huge condo issue, meaning HOAs getting approved for a condo association, condos not doing their 40-year inspection, big condo associations funneling the money, falsifying budget. And it's only like this in South Florida and even Florida in general. Any other state, to purchase a condo, you can get an FHA loan, you can do a conventional loan as low as 3%. And that's just not the case in Florida. There's only a needle in a haystack of condos you can do that. So that number one's change. I think number two in change is that there needs to be a huge uptake in wage difference. I feel in certain, occupations, people are getting underpaid, right? For example, I think teachers are extremely underpaid. Extremely, extremely, extremely underpaid. We have a program going on in Florida. It's called the Hometown Heroes program. If you're a teacher, if you're law enforcement, there's many different occupations on there, but they'll contribute 25,000, up to 25,000 to your purchase of your home. The problem with that is that if a teacher's making 40,000 and she's honestly been working as a teacher for 10 years plus, and her income is still around that 40 to 50 range, she cannot afford anything in Florida, right? So as far as a teacher, they're getting handicapped to rent a home unless they purchase when the market was fairly more reasonable, to a point to where, what's the point? We're forcing teachers to stop teaching and go get another job because they can leave teaching that they've been teaching for 10 years, get a job with zero experience, and up their income 20,000. Me personally, I think that's a huge problem. I know teachers that I still, are friends with on Facebook, whatever it may be, that have built the core foundation for me, right? I will remember them for the rest of my life. I have coaches I remember for the rest of my life. And for me, I think, that's one of the things that's very, very important. Now, another thing in which this actually just got changed recently, and we should see it, is teaching financial education when you are young, right? We live in a country that it's opportunity. There's opportunity just, anywhere, anywhere, anywhere. There is opportunity everywhere. Anyone could do anything in this country, right? But people are handicapped by, little to no knowledge, right? And it's because they're surrounded by the people they're surrounded by, right? I think, who you associate yourself with, more than likely, that's who you're going to be. If I didn't have parents out in real estate, I don't think I would be in the real estate industry. I don't think I would purchase a property. And honestly, my credit would probably suck. So a bunch of those things correlate to each other. But if we can go, start someone, whether that be in middle school, high school, and start to educate people on financials, whether that be credit, whether that be how to save money, just simple things, I think it will set everyone up, and everyone, although everyone's on the same playing field, it'll just even the playing field even more.
Definitely, man. I would really love to see something like that, because the belief set and the mindset that we kind of grew up with out of graduating college, I would almost like that to be completely turned
Yeah.
180 on its head. I would love for high schoolers and young adults, really, especially at the age of 18,
Yeah.
the earlier you know this information, because it's taken me years to
Yeah.
learn all by myself, or learn all this through mentorship, or learn all this through courses. If
Yeah.
we're able to implement these values and these simple things that we kind of talked about here, that are just really slight differences in
Yeah.
belief and mindset, imagine the trajectory and the benefit of their lives that it'll have in the community if it starts at a much younger
Yeah.
age, rather
And
than
and it helps everyone too,
yes,
right? It
absolutely.
helps everyone. It helps families. Only one person in your family really has to have their head on their shoulders to change the trajectory, right? Because now they're giving out knowledge to other people. So it will cause, the US in a whole to limit things like homelessness, starvation, which in a country like this, we shouldn't have these things. We shouldn't, right? Land of opportunity, we should not have these things, but it's a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of having the right people around them. And I think that's very, very important.
Definitely, man. I got my last question for you. I really appreciate you, and I thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
I know this value that you've provided in this conversation. I know it's really honestly priceless. We really can't put a price on what you've given us here. So I
appreciate
do
it.
want to thank you for that. But last and final question. I do want to know just the whole aspect of real estate and buying, and now becoming a loan officer like yourself. I really want to know the impact it's made on your life, your lineage, and of course the ones you surround yourself with as well.
Yeah. So I think honestly, real estate's crazy because ever since I got in the industry, I feel like I talk about it and it's just I'm always talking about it because I'm such a big believer in it. I truly think it can change, everyone's life, right? I know people that are 40 years old that don't own a property. They're just now getting their first home, right? If they would have bought a home 20 years ago, I mean, they costly could have paid for their kid to go to college, meaning they wouldn't have co-signed on their kid's college. They wouldn't have all this credit card debt because they would have equity. They wouldn't have got their rent raised $2,000, $1,000. But real estate for me, I feel like it changed my life because it changed my mindset. Right now, I have a clear goal. To now, I'm going to use this tool. And also, I have other tools, I have other businesses, I have other things I invest in. But I'm truly a big believer in real estate because it's the only one that, like I talked about, those four things: cash flow, appreciation, taxes, and what was the last one? I can't even speak right now, but I said it earlier. But those four things that now you can use to not only achieve, your freedom, because everyone's freedom's different, right? I'm a workaholic, so I don't think I'll ever start working, right? But I'll be able to use this freedom to do things that I want to do, right? Because I'm not at the, mercy of having to go ahead and pay my mortgage, not having to go ahead and pay, all these expenses, these bills, because I'll have passive income coming and paying for those things. So now I can free up my time and honestly take more risks. I do take a lot of risks, right? Getting in the mortgage industry, for example, is a risk, right? You're no guaranteed to make money in it, right? It's 100% commission, but it gives me more chance to take risks. I am a big risk taker, so that's my belief on it. That's how I think real estate changed my life, and it can change other people's lives.
I appreciate you so much, Courtney. Please let people know where they can find you, and we'll close this one out.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can give me a call, my personal phone number, text me 954-328-4089. Fairly available, even though I'm very, very busy. Follow me on Instagram, Courtney_Douglas, FL for Florida. Follow me on Facebook. Even though I maxed out my Facebook friends, I didn't know that was a thing, but I did. But feel free to reach me. I'm fairly easy reachable. And thank you for having me, man.
Always, man. This was only the second episode of the Asking You Shall Receive podcast. Our goal here is to always provide value. Please tune in next week. I hope you got your notes ready, and I hope you got plenty of notes from this. We'll check you guys next week, and thanks again.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much. All right.